Hello students. Well, today we're going to look at a short video on how you prepare a journal entry in accounting class. So I do want to point out that there are differences between accounting education, accounting class, and real life. So of course in real life, pretty much everyone is using accounting software. So if you're using accounting software to do your journal entries, then you're just following the prompts of the software. And at this point in your accounting education, you should know what an account is, and you should know how to determine what accounts are affected by a journal entry and sort of know those basics. So if you were working, let's say, as an accounting clerk somewhere, you might just, pick the account title from a drop-down menu, click on it, and poof, it types out the account title for you. And then, you click debit and you key in the number. And then you do the same thing for the credit. Then you look at your entry, you hit post, and it posts it for you to the ledger. So that's great. In accounting class, we rarely have access to accounting software. Plus, we're doing questions, and these are usually shorter questions. They're not like sitting in front of a computer all day doing journal entries. It's just a short question. So typically in accounting class, we do manual accounting and manual journal entries. Now I've chosen to do typed journal entries. Depending who your teacher is, they might let you hand in handwritten work, or they might ask for typed work. But I prefer typed work because I can read it. And then sometimes I can't read handwriting. So I'm going to go over the best way to do a journal entry. And I'd also like to mention that the way I'm going to show you to do a journal entry is the same as you will see in most introductory accounting textbooks. So this is not a different method. It's just getting you used to doing it the proper way and looking at some of the specific rules, what you need to do and not do to get your journal entries correct. So it's a way for you to make sure you're doing your entries correctly, as well as maybe if you're handing in an assignment, not lose marks on poor format for journal entries. So no point losing those marks if you don't have to. So I find that the best way to do journal entries on a computer typing is a word table. And I've got a word table below, you can see here. And I know some students like to do this in Excel, but I find Word is just as easy, and it's a little bit easier even, again, to use a word table than Excel. Now, I understand if you're going to do a worksheet on Excel, because you can use the functions of Excel to add all your numbers for you and so on. But there's no real addition and subtraction going on when you're doing journal entries, especially again in accounting class, you're just looking at a basic transaction. So what I have here is a general journal. And I just want to mention though, a general journal is the one that you're most likely to see in accounting class. There are special journals, and some accounting courses cover these, but if you were using a special journal such as a sales journal, then you're doing it mainly on accounting software. There's really no point doing or using special journals in a manual system. So pretty much all the accounting courses today, most of them are just using a general journal. And that just means every time you have a transaction, you prepare a journal entry for that transaction. So we're going to use a word table to do our entries. So let's just look at some of the basics, and then I'm going to look at some of the very specific rules, let's say, on how to do this properly. So provided services for cash, $200. Now we do need a date. I'll just make up a date as we go on. So if we provided services for cash 200, then our cash goes up, and that's a debit, and we would call that service revenue, and that would be our credit. So we start with our date, and I'm personally allowing an abbreviation for the date, but I like it to be in standard format, so don't go like 02, 05, 24 or something like that. We want to know, we want everyone looking at this to know what the date is, whether it's, month, day, year, or day, month, year can be really confusing. So we're going to just write December 17. Now we might put in the year or not, but I'm going to just use December 17. So here's how we start to do our journal entry. We know that cash is the debit. The debit always goes first, and there are no exceptions, and the debit starts here at the left margin of this column in the table. So here's my cash going up, and it's a debit, it's $200, and as we determined before, the credit is to service revenue. So here's the first thing that you need to really be aware of. We indent the credit account title, usually 3 letters. Now, Word doesn't give you one tap of the space bar equals 1 letter. One tap of your space bar in Word is less than a letter. So unfortunately, but where we want this credit to start is somewhere in around here after the 3 letters in. So I'm just going to tap the space bar about here. So that's 3 letters in. And we have service revenue, also $200. Now, some instructors will ask you to type an explanation line, and some won't. Now, I'm one of the ones who doesn't, but I don't let students use abbreviations at all. So you wouldn't abbreviate any of these accounts anyway, but when it comes to accounts receivable and accounts payable, I don't allow any abbreviations. But I don't require you to type in the explanation line. Lots of accounting classes will require you to type in an explanation line. So if you do that, the explanation line starts here at the left margin, and we would explain this transaction something like this. Provided services for cash. So here we have a complete journal entry. Now the only other thing I want to do is right align all of these numbers. Let's try right aligning them. Whoa, what's that? Huh. Okay, there we go. So numbers are right aligned. Now the other thing is I'm dealing here, again, this is accounting class, it's not real life. I'm dealing in even dollars, and a lot of your accounting class work will be in even dollars. So normally you do not have to go, like 0.00 and put in the pennies. You might, but depends on the instructor. So I'm just using even dollars. In real life, of course, you cannot do that. And I just want to remind you that, in Canada, even though we don't have pennies in circulation, pennies are still part of our money system. So you could get a bill for, $214.53. Well, your amount is $214.53. You can't round that off because you're going to send them a deposit transfer or a check for exactly that amount. So again, a difference between real life and accounting class. So the post reference column here I didn't fill in, and that's because I have not posted this to the cash ledger account or to the service revenue ledger account. So PR stands for posting reference, and if you are doing this manually, you're going to have to find the cash ledger account. You're going to see this $200 on December 17, and you're going to put a line in your cash ledger that's going to be saying December 17, $200 debit. And once you do that into your cash ledger, then you come back and you put in the number for the cash ledger account, because they're all numbered. So something like 101. And the 101 here would mean that you have already posted this amount. So again, in accounting class, many times we're just asked to do the journal entry. Posting to ledger accounts manually is incredibly tedious, and it's kind of mindless too, because you've already figured out the transaction. So service revenue, it might have, why does this keep happening? Oh well. Service revenue might have, let's say, an account number. Let's just say, 401. So you are going to key in that account number after you post to the service revenue account. So if you did not post as part of your accounting question, then don't put in these numbers. Okay. Let's do 2 more journal entries together, and then I'll just go over some of the general rules with you at the end. So provided services on account, 300. So very similar to our first entry, services on account, people owe us money, we're going to receive money. I'm calling that accounts receivable. That's going to be a debit because it goes up. The service revenue is $300. Now, let's say that this happened on the 17th. I'm going to skip a line here, and I'm going to write 17. So I'd like you to notice that we don't have to repeat the month. We only need to write the month once per journal page, but we do need to put a day in, the date of the day of the month for every entry. So we just write 17 here. You don't write December again, and we have accounts receivable. And the credit, again, indent this 3 letters. That's right now I'm using about 5 or 6 taps of the space bar to do that. And then the account is service revenue. Now I'm just going to show you a little interesting thing you can do in Word. I don't have to type service revenue again. I have service revenue. I'll just go Control C, Control V, and adjust where it starts. But there's my service revenue. So this is an advantage of using a word table and typing your work. You don't have to write service revenue again. What if you were doing a whole page of entries and there were 4 things with service revenue? Well, you just copy paste it every time. And again, here's my explanation line. So look at what I can do here. I can copy this in and just write provided services, and I'll write on account. Okay, look at that. That's efficient, right? And then I'm going to put in the dollar amount, the debit first. All debits go first, followed by the credits. There's our 300. So let's do one more journal entry together. Let's say it's December 19 this time. So there's December 19th and purchased supplies on account. Just keep in mind when you buy supplies, they are an asset. It's only as you use them up that they become an expense. So we're going to debit supplies because our asset supplies went up, and indent the credit 3 letters about there. And this is a credit to accounts payable. And 100. Okay, so again, if you're required to type in an explanation line, then you would start it here at the left margin and you would write purchased supplies on account. You know, when I'm teaching accounting classes, I don't require students to type in the explanation line, and that's really just to save students a lot of typing. It saves a lot of time to not bother. Now, one of the things that makes a journal entry look a lot better is if your whole journal entry account title, and as at least the account title, possibly even the explanation, is on one row. So this is at minimum, the account titles should fit on one row. So if you're later on doing a journal entry with a really long account title, let's say accumulated depreciation equipment, well, I want that on one row. Don't start stacking rows. So if you want to do that, you need to adjust your table. So I obviously have a lot of room here for the numbers. So what I can do is I can take up less room for the numbers, and the PR column is just an account number itself. So when I move this row, I get room for the explanation line as well. So this just makes everything look tidy. Now, one of the reasons we do journal entries this way is that it's a standard format so that anyone who looks at your accounting records can understand immediately what's going on. We indent the credit account title so that everyone knows at a glance that that is the credit account title because it's indented. You know, if all your credits started here, they all look the same, especially if we get an a transaction with 2 or more debits or 2 or more credits, which does happen. So put that back. Okay, so here we've done 3 representative journal entries. If your journal entries look like this, then you're doing a really good job. And this is not just my method. This is very, very similar to what journal entries look like in every introductory accounting textbook around for financial accounting. So you would be well served to do your journal entries this way. I use a word table. If you're typing, you can use copy paste sometimes to move things along a little bit better and not type as much. Just be careful that you don't just wildly copy paste and put in the wrong account title. Now, some do's and don'ts for journal entries. All of your debits before any credits. So that means, let's say you bought equipment, and let's say equipment and land at the same time. Kind of odd. You probably didn't, but anyway, I'll make it a vehicle. Let's say you went to an auction and you paid, $40,000 for a used vehicle and equipment. So you have equipment and you have a vehicle. Well, you would put in the date and you would debit your equipment, and then you would debit your vehicle, and let's say you have to split them up. So let's say it was, 18,000 and 22,000, and you paid cash. Okay, so that would be, I haven't typed in an explanation line, and I think I don't want to. So another note that I didn't write down below is that if you have a number over 999, you have to use commas. And that just means someone reading your records can read it more clearly. So if you have a great big number, $3,445,988, well, look at that. What a mess, right? It's hard to glance at that and know what it is. But if we use commas, comma there, comma every 3 digits from the right. So now 3,445,988 is easy to read. So use commas for all numbers over 999. Back where we were. Again, the credit title is indented 3 letters. Your explanation starts at the left. Fit the account title on one row. Right align your numbers. You only have to key in the month once per journal page. However, every entry needs a day of the month. Okay, so I didn't just, here especially, 2 transactions on the 17th, still write the 17. There is no $ on journal entry numbers and no abbreviations. So I wrote out accounts receivable and accounts payable in full, and you'll see that there's no $. So what you see here on the screen is the correct format for your journal entry. So that's it for this video. We'll continue on with some others, looking at maybe doing some adjusting entries, and later on as you move a little bit further through your course.